Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast by the Tarika Foundation. As parents, we spend so much time wondering how to help our children grow into kind, confident, and resilient human beings. But what if one of the greatest gifts parenting offers is the opportunity for us to grow as well? Today's guest believes that the answer we seek are not found in another parenting strategy. They are found by reconnecting with ourselves. I'm delighted to welcome Marina here, an integrative parent and teen coach whose work brings together mindfulness, nonviolent communication, mindful self compassion, compassionate inquiry, and trauma sensitive mindfulness to help parents build deeper, more connected relationships with our children. Marina, welcome.
Thank you, Poonam. It's a privilege to be able to be here with you today.
So, Marina, before we get into question answer, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit? Where are you joining us from? Little bit of your background, even though I did do little bit introduction, but we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I'm currently living on Bainbridge Island in Washington State, but I've spent many decades in California. I grew up in Southern California and spent most of my adult life in the Bay Area. Parenting is, to me, like one of the most hardest and also the most joyful experiences in our lives. And it was when my kids were young, it was difficult. And I've gained a lot and they've taught me a lot. And so I'm here to, share my lived experience and hoping to offer parents support during this journey because especially in the Bay Area or even in today, we tend to parent alone and we really need to be parenting in community. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to just, offer that kind of support here.
Thank you, Marina. On your website, you write something that really resonated with me. The wise and capable parent I had been searching was already within me. So, could you tell us what that realization means to you?
This realization means that it's okay to seek support. And most of the time, we're seeking support that's out there. We're researching on the latest parenting methodology, the research, the data, and then we go and try all these things that we're learning. And then we're filling our minds with just a lot of information. And that can get really overwhelming and very draining. And the more that we look out there, the more that we're going away from ourselves. And so, another way of seeking support is to find teachers and spaces where you get an opportunity to get to know what's in here, to get to know our inner landscape. And that means looking at our thoughts, our emotions, our values, what's important to us, and connecting to already the wise and capable parent that's here. And what happens is that we have layers of like judgments and wounding that we haven't even had a chance to take care of. And again, that keeps us away from that wise and capable parent.
Thank you, Marina. But I understand, like we say, inner peace. Peace is within us, but we are looking outside. And what I'm understanding, even we are wise and capable parent, solutions are within us, but maybe we are looking outside, and it's okay to look outside for guidance from experienced parents, but we need to do that inner work. So my follow-up question for you, how did your own parenting struggles become a path of personal growth?
Well, I realized that, when my kids were young, they would fight all the time. And I didn't like the way I showed up without heart. And I knew that that wasn't how I wanted to have them grow up in an environment where they didn't know how to resolve conflict. And I knew that if I got to the root of what they were fighting about, that the conflict would not be present because they were then able to be seen, to be understood for what they were going through, and not focusing so much on, I don't know how to deal with this, but really being able to see and understand what they were going through. And I knew that I didn't have the tools to do that. And so through many, many years of finding spaces and tools to connect to myself, I was able to then find my own way to be with my children.
Thank you for sharing that, Marina. Many parents tell themselves, why did I react like that? That's not the parent I want to be. And you're also sharing from your personal experience. So, why do our children's behavior sometimes trigger such strong emotions, emotional reaction, in fact?
Yeah, so when we are triggered by our children and we're reacting strongly, and for that matter, by anybody, what's really happening is not our adult self that's showing up. It's our younger part of us. So a trigger can be traced back to a time in our childhood where we weren't being seen, being heard, being accepted. And so developing a new relationship with the trigger is looking at what that younger self did not get when they were growing up. And part of that process is reparenting ourselves. So, as an adult self, can we hold the experiences that weren't able to be held by the caregivers when they were younger? And can I, as the adult self, give my younger self what they didn't get? And so once we're able to do that slowly over time, when that trigger comes up, we can notice, you know what? That's not really me that's showing up right now. And through that process, you can find a different way of responding rather than reacting.
So, Marina, what I understood, you're saying we all adults, parents, we have inner child. Maybe our own needs were not met when we were younger. And now, when we are parenting, so our own unmet needs are showing up as a reactions to our kids. So first, we need to heal our own selves, and that inner child we all have, nurture that inner child, and it happens over the time, as you're saying. So how can parents become curious instead of critical when those reactions happen?
Yeah, and it's really understanding what that inner child didn't get and understanding that there was not a space for them to express what was going on, Not saying that their caregivers didn't love them or care about them, but that they didn't have the capacity to deal with whatever was going on because they were dealing with their own inner child. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, understood. So, but I know and I do practice too. So, mindfulness teaches us to pause before reacting. So, what happens in that pause, and how can just a few mindful breaths change the direction of difficult interactions?
So when there's a trigger coming at us, we tend to be in this kind of fight, flight, maybe state. And when that is happening, then we don't have access to we have less access to our prefrontal cortex, which is where reasoning, planning, and like weighing consequences take place. So by taking a few mindful breaths, especially if the exhale is longer than the inhale, we're calming down our nervous system. Then we have more access to our prefrontal cortex. We can be in a space where, again, we can check in with what's going on in here. Maybe even then being able to be in place to get curious about what's happening for our child. And then, of course, the response is going to be more connecting than the reaction. And I love what Viktor Frankl says, which captures what I'm trying to say here, which is between stimulus and response, there is a space. In this space is our choice to choose our response. And in our response lies our power and our growth.
Absolutely. So, for parents who say, I don't have time to meditate, what simple mindfulness practice could they begin using today?
Actually, we might think that, having, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour in the morning or evening to sit and meditate, will it's a practice that, we should do. But research has shown that actually moments of mindfulness throughout the day is just as effective. So maybe finding a daily activity, whether it's brushing your teeth or the first bite of every meal, or walking from, point A to point B, we can be present with what's happening. It doesn't have to be the breath, it can be the sounds in our space, it can be when we're walking, feeling our feet on the floor, or, setting your timer and just say, okay, for every 2 hours, for 3 seconds, when it goes off, I'll take 3 mindful breaths. And that's equally powerful than having a meditation practice.
Thank you, Marina. And I can speak for myself. Definitely, after every hour, 3 breaths I did for years and it did magic to me. And as you were explaining, how parasympathetic nervous systems kicks in, your emotions are diffused, you're feeling that calmness. And so I can say that from my practical experience. I wanted to ask you another question. Many parents have that harsh inner critic. And after a difficult day, they replay every mistake. How does self compassion change the way we parent?
So, self compassion actually needs mindfulness. It needs us to be aware that we're replaying that inner critic and replaying that mistake. So, once we're aware that that's happening, we have a choice. Do we want to continue replaying? You can if you want. Or in this moment, can I do something else to take care of myself? So that's the first step. Once we recognize that the replay is happening, then you know what? You're probably not the only parent on this planet who's made that mistake. There's at least one or many more parents out there who has made the same or the similar mistake. So knowing that, we have the shared humanity, that mistakes are part of parenting and it normalizes the mistake, which then can help us feel a little bit better about it. So this is common humanity. And then the third piece is, you know what? If a good friend of mine made the same mistake, would I be like critical at them? So asking yourself, well, what would I say to my friend and how would I be with my friend as a way to offer support and comfort? And then whatever arises, can you then say that to yourself? You know, sometimes we're so harsh that, like, you know, we can't say to ourselves, you know what, it's going to be okay. And if we have to argue with that statement, then maybe something like, can I know that it's going to be okay? Yeah. So that's the self compassion practice.
Yes, so, Marina, the third bullet point you shared, again, it's very powerful. I applied it in my parenting journey. I taught even to my kids, and I will give you a quick example. You know how we are so wonderful giving advices to others, but we don't give that advice to our own self. So my daughter, she was that time in eighth grade, and she had exam, and she was very stressed out, and she was like telling herself, "Oh my God, you will not do good, and you're not worthy, or you are this or that." And then she came to me, and I told her to give that compassion to herself, but then she would not understand what I were going to ask her. But then I said, "Hey, imagine this is happening with your friend. What advice are you going to give to your friend?" And then she came up with beautiful advices saying, "Hey, you worked hard the whole year. One day practice or extra hours won't change anything. Do your best and leave the rest." I said, "Wonderful. Why don't you give that advice to yourself?" So it is so magical. You know, we feel so attached to our own pain or situation. We are good at giving advices to other selves. And I applied that trick to my own situation several times, not only in my parenting, but at my workplace also. You know, when boss said something to me, am I repeating that 10 times, 20 times and hurting my own self? Or can I just say, yeah, he did not have a good day. It's okay. Right? So, very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask you.
I just want to add, Poonam, that that compassionate voice is there within us. We know how to do it, right, for our friends. And it just haven't had a lot of space, right? That critic, the inner critic runs the show all the time. So it's really the practice is kind of turning down that volume of the inner critic and then giving space for that volume of the compassionate voice because it's there. We know how to do it and we just need to practice it for ourselves. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with it.
Yep, Marina, it was a long journey for me also, that unkind mind, kind mind, you know, that compassionate voice versus critical voice. Okay, how do I filter out? Yeah, sometimes one noise is louder than the other. Sometimes it was easier, sometimes it took work, but beautiful results. I became my own good friend, and I'm so glad I did that. So I wanted to ask you another question. Children and especially teenagers often say, "You don't understand me." So, what does deep listening actually looks like? Because even my kids used to say that, "You don't understand me. You're not born raised here." And my son would say, "You are not in a male body." So, tell us more about the listening deeply.
Yeah. So deep listening is listening with presence. And what that looks like is we're being there with this our child, the speaker. And then when we notice that, oh, you know, how am I going to respond to this? Or, oh, I have some judgments about that, or I have some feelings about that. So when you notice that those thoughts are happening, can you just set it aside, let it go? Because then it pulls your attention away from your child speaking. And the other piece that might be helpful if it's not too distracting is, can I put myself in the shoes of my child, and can I see the world through their eyes? Can I get to know their perspective? Can I understand how they're feeling and maybe what they're needing? And then again, noticing if your perspective and feelings and wants are getting mixed in, then maybe that doesn't work quite well. But if you notice that, can you again put that aside, let that go, and really see if you can be in the world of your child and see the world through their eyes as a way to understand what they're really going through.
So, what I'm understanding, you're saying listen to respond, right? Or listen to rather not respond, understand first, and do not just go in your own world of judgment or cooking up things or not. Like, just be fully present, right? So that's what I'm learning from you. Beautiful. And in your intro, I talked about non-violent communication also, and I am so glad we will go in that deeper with you in a workshop style also. But I wanted to bring little bit that perspective in this episode as well. So many conflicts at home begin with good intentions, but end with hurt feelings. So, how has nonviolent communication changed the way you help families communicate? Could you share one example of how a parent might transform a common conversation? For example, instead of, why don't you ever listen? How might that conversation sound using nonviolent communication NVC?
Yeah, so the goal of NVC in any interaction is connection. And what gets in the way in connecting with your child is if you're trying to educate them, say that you're right, judgments, blame, shame, making demands. These are violence that show up in our communication. And when parents realize that when I engage in these ways of speaking, there's a cost in the connection with my child. And for me, and I'm guessing for most parents, that connection, that relationship is so important to us. And so when parents recognize that, then they're open to exploring another way of communicating. So let's say you have made an agreement with your child that they're going to play their video game after they finish their homework. And I put air quotes on agreement because I think a lot of times, and I made this mistake over and over again, is that we want something to happen and then we assume that our child is going to agree to it. But in reality, there's not maybe that 100% willingness or even 80% willingness on their part to the agreement. But let's say for this example, you have this agreement and you then find your child playing a video game and you know that they haven't done their homework. So in that moment, I can see two choices. One is to let them finish because that's probably not a good time to be talking about, like, why don't you ever listen to me? We made this agreement, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe you can choose to, okay, well, I'll wait for a pause in their game. And then I'm going to say, hey, we have this agreement, homework first and video game. Can we talk about it? And, let's say that the child and you agree on a time to talk about it and then hold them accountable. Make sure that you go back at that time. So now hopefully both parties are calm and the conversation could sound something like this. This is the third time this week that I've noticed you're on the computer playing games with your friends online and you haven't finished your homework. We have this agreement and it's really important for me that when we say we're going to do something, that we stick to it. there's something like about integrity for me that's really important. And so then you can ask your child, can you tell me what you heard? I said that was important to me. And they might say something, oh, you just don't like video games. You don't want me to play video games because you think they're bad for me. And you can respond by, I know that gaming is something that you enjoy and it's something that's fun for you. And it's really important for me that you have fun. But what we're talking about is the agreement. I need to trust that when we have an agreement, that we follow it. Again, it's really important for me that when you say something and I say something that we both agree to it, that we stick with it. So can you tell me what happened this week that maybe made it hard for you to finish your homework first before playing video games? Maybe they'll say something like, oh, I met a new friend at school. This is the only time they could play. And so, it's a back and forth, really understanding where your child is coming from. They have needs and you have needs. Like in this situation, maybe your need is for reassurance that their homework will be done because you don't want them to fall behind in their schoolwork. Maybe it's also some predictability through the day. When they come home, these sets of things happen and homework gets done. For the child, it might be, I really want to be able to choose when I do my homework and play my game. I want to have fun in my day. So, it can look something like modifying the agreement to include that situation that came up this week with meeting a new friend in school. Or it might go to all the way, okay, you know what? You get to choose, when you play and when you do homework. And let's try this for the next week, right? It doesn't have to be set in stone. It's a living agreement. So we try whatever we agree to for the next week, and then we can revisit. And the important thing I really want to emphasize here is that, we as parents have needs, our child have needs. And in not every situation, our needs are going to be met. But what's really important is to recognize that everybody's needs matter. And there's a reason why we can't meet that in this moment. And then supporting your child in whatever they're feeling, like they might be angry about it or frustrated or sad. But having that space to really support them through that, because, in life, we can't always get what we want. But having tools to deal with those difficult emotions, to know that my needs matter and to know that they can't always be met, it's a life skill that I think we all need to learn.
Fully agree, Marina. We all need to learn those skills. Connections are important. Ruptures can happen. How do we repair? When to repair? You brought very beautiful scenario. When emotions are high, is it the right time to talk, or let the calmness comes, and then we can hold each other accountable? And as you said, it's not set in stone. So I think that talking, that communication channel, keeping that open, that compassion, beautiful thing. And we definitely will have another workshop with you to learn these life skills. But I wanted to ask you, imagine a parent listening today who feels exhausted. They have maybe read all the parenting books, they have tried every strategy. They are wondering, what am I missing? What would you want to say to them?
I would say just let go of trying so hard and then ask yourself, what do I need to fill up my cup? And, whatever that is, whether it's taking a day off, if that's possible, or even an hour to be out in nature, or to call a friend, or have lunch with a friend, but do what you need to take care of yourself, because when you're depleted, there's no way you're going to be able to provide the environment that you want for your kids. Reactions are going to happen. So really taking care of yourself. And then once you feel a little bit more grounded, look for spaces and communities where you can get together and process and reflect all these parenting challenges that a lot of us go through. And in those spaces, you'll find ways to connect to that wise and capable parent that's already there. And this is a way that you can also take care of yourself. It might, maybe it's getting together every 2 weeks and really dedicating that time. Because for me, I actually committed to 6 months, like when I was learning MBC. By the end of my training, I still didn't feel like I could communicate in the way that I wanted to. So I committed to 6 months of going to a practice group every single week. Unless there was a family emergency, I was there. And that was the best thing I did for myself. Yeah.
Thank you, Marina. So what I'm understanding is if your own, like your cup is empty, you cannot fill other people's cup. And that self-compassion is self-care. Just look at your own needs and then, meet your own needs. Because, if I will give to others what I have, if I am stressed, overwhelmed, that's what I will bring to my parenting and my home. So it's better to even take a pause, do that inner work. What are my needs? How can I fill my cup? And as you said, if you need to take day off, do that. So my learning is, yeah, self-compassion is self-care. Love yourself and do not beat yourself up. Do not need to be a perfect parent. It's okay not to be a perfect parent, but be a present parent. I wanted to ask a few other things from your experience. And as you said, you were committed, you did that, and we see work yourself and you took that support. So I wanted to understand what else parenting has taught you. So if you can complete the sentence, the most healing words a child can hear are.
I see you. I love you. You matter to me. And you're okay just as you are.
Thank you. The most healing words a parent can hear are.
I am human. Like you said, I will make mistakes. And that's okay because these mistakes have something to teach me.
Wonderful. One thing every parent should start practicing.
You've actually said it, Poonam. Self-compassion and self-care, and I'll add mindfulness as well.
Thank you. One daily family ritual that creates connection.
Having a meal together every day where you can connect and share what's going on. Yeah, having one family meal every day.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Marina, if every parent listening today paused for just 1 minute before bedtime, what question would you invite them to ask themselves?
What do I need and what can I do to take care of myself?
Wonderful. I think as we have been talking, if the parent knows their own needs, they're taking care of themselves, they will know even their child need and they can take care. So the main responsibility of parenting is to nurture our own inner child. That's what I'm learning from you. So, what stands out about your work is that you don't promise a better parenting technique. You invite parents into a different relationship with themselves, right? And your message is that mindfulness, self compassion, curiosity, and deep listening are not just tools for raising children, they are practices that transform the parent. The perspective is deeply aligned what you shared with Tarika Foundation, and our mission is also for nurturing emotional well-being, reducing stigma, and helping families build resilient, connected relationship. I'm so grateful you joined us today. You shared so many tools, and we would love to bring you back for digging deeper into NYC in a workshop style where even parents can join, they can ask questions, and they can also look at the role play. So I'm very excited to have that workshop with you, Marina. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. Truly appreciate it.
And thank you, Poonam, for inviting me and spending this time with me. I'm also very grateful and appreciative of our time together today.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every month, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we thank you so much for listening.